Now let's digress into other matters because President John Dramani Mahama has made some appointments. Recall that in Boko yesterday, he hinted of a shake-up in the security apparatus of the country. And subsequently today, a statement issued from the presidency's communications bureau has confirmed same. President making key national security appointments, which appointments will see the likes of Kofi Boakye, Prosper Bani, Charles Kipo in new security appointments. And so I'll just bring you a brief of it, and then I'll engage my colleague Hansen Ajiman on these particular appointments. Story says the President John Dramani Mahama, and I am reading this story from citynewsroom.com because we have received a copy of that letter and subsequently published the same. Story says that President John Dramani Mahama has announced a series of key security appointments aimed at strengthening national security and ensuring safety of citizens. Leading the appointment is Prosper Douglas Bani, who has been named National Security Advisor to the President. Mr. Bani, a former Chief of Staff and Minister for the Interior, brings extensive experience and expertise in governance and security to the role. You have DCOP Abdul Osman Razak, who has been appointed National Security Coordinator, tasked with ensuring a cohesive and strategic approach to the country's security initiatives. The President has also named COP Nathan Kofi Boakye, retired, as Director of Operations at the Presidency, where he will oversee operational effectiveness in security matters. COP Boakye is renowned for his decades of service and operational acumen. Additionally, Charles Kipo has been appointed Director General of the National Intelligence Bureau, NIB, a critical role that focuses on intelligence gathering and analysis to preempt security threats. These appointments reflect the administration's dedication to maintaining national security and fostering trust among citizens. And so when you go to citynewsroom.com, also ChannelOneNews.com, you find copies of the statement there, which was signed by the acting spokesperson to the President, Felix Kwakye Ofosu. My colleague Hansen Ajiman has joined me in studio to take a look at these appointments as made by John Mahama, His Excellency, the President of the Republic. Hansen, thank you and welcome. These appointments, not new faces. They have been in the system over the period. So let's look at someone like Prosper Douglas Bani. He has served as Minister for the Interior before. This time, he's taking the role as National Security Advisor. What does he bring?
I mean, he brings worth of experience, of course. And obviously, if anything from the appointments of John Dramani Mahama is to go, then we are beginning to see the sort of thinking that is going through his mind and his advisors as he makes his appointment, that he needs people of experience, people who've been there before, particularly because he's been president before, and a lot of people have argued that this is a time for him to build a legacy for himself, a legacy that will speak well of the man who had been president, became a former president, and has become president again. I mean, Prosper Bani, apart from being a Minister of Interior, has been a former Minister of Interior, was a former Chief of Staff. And obviously, if you look at the role that the Chief of Staff plays, the Chief of Staff, even though there exists the role of the Vice President, the Chief of Staff literally is a 2IC of the President. The Chief of Staff, often than not, is the one who ensures that there's discipline within the government, ensures that there's discipline among appointees. And so if he's coming in with the experience of being a former Chief of Staff, as well as being a former Minister of Interior, being a former Minister of Interior means that you essentially have the function of keeping the peace within the country. And so agencies like the Ghana Police Service, that is primarily responsible for protecting property and ensuring peace within the country would often than not report to the Minister of Interior and work hand in hand with the Minister of Interior. Now, when people are in government, and as we've seen in past governments, the greatest challenge has to do with the actions and inactions of his own appointees. Talk of abuse of office, talk of people who think that their government is in power and so they can do what they want. And so to have somebody who has performed the role as chief of staff, which essentially, among all other things, is to ensure sanity within the government and knows how government appointees operate. And the same person having served as Minister of Interior and having had briefs on security challenges of the country in time past and still operating within the space even after his party went out of government. I think that is a good appointment. And of course, the works of Professor Bani is known by many, but particularly because of the security, the peculiar security challenges that the John Dramani Mahama administration has taken upon itself to tackle with respect to the Boko conflict, with respect to other chieftaincy disputes that the John Dramani Mahama administration is seeking to put an end to by the time the 4-year tenure has ended. He will need somebody like that. And of course, when you talk about the national security advisor, essentially his role will be to make sure that at least the president is well briefed. The president, before taking any decision on security issues, will have a better understanding of what is at stake and the pros and cons of the various options that the president will seek to take. And so having somebody who the president also believes in is important. And mind you, even before the president was sworn in and before this appointment, some of these persons had already been named to take charge of security activities within the transition period. It tells of the sort of confidence that John Dramani Mahama reposes in the likes of Prosper Bani and COP Neta and Kofi Boache and all the other persons that have been named in this major security appointment. An observation I must say is that when it comes to governance, perception is key. And so when the people see the leader to be very decisive, it helps with the perception. And I must say, in the first 1 week of the president, he's been nothing but decisive in what he seeks to do. Whether you decide to call his appointments thought by thought basis, or whether you wish that he would have brought all these appointments at the same time, there's one thing that is common, that he knows what he wants to do. I mean, as to whether what he wants to do and what he's doing will indeed fly, we leave it to time. But he is certain in his mind the people he's seeking to work with. I mean, yesterday he was at the, he was in Boko, and then he visited the Nigeria as well in the Northeast region. And the major outcome of the meeting was that he was going to appoint his security corpus. And of course, he has lived to that expectation. He's appointed them. These are people, again, that since their appointment during the transition period to coordinate the national security issues, we've seen how the party base itself has been happy with the appointment. And I think that in a polarized political environment like ours, also appealing and appeasing to the party base is also essential. Mind you, we are always one step away from another election, and also keeping the peace of the country is essential. Sometimes trying to get the buy-in of all persons is needed. And for me, my initial comments is that the decision as has been taken by former President President John Dramani.
It will take some getting used to. It will take some getting used
by
to.
President John.
Exactly.
By President John.
We've been calling him former president for a very long time.
I mean, for 8 years.
For 8 years. So
President John Dramani Mahama
yes.
is instructive.
His Excellency.
It's instructive. It's decisive, and of course, the security issues that we face as a country are enormous, and also it takes some level of collaboration between these persons and the institutions for which they are going to head to be able to keep the peace as we have it in the country.
Right. The president on January 3, during the transition, made some appointments to his national security coordinating team. 2 of those names have now received permanent appointments within the security setup of the country. The 2 you would have Prosper Douglas Bunny in there, and then you would have COP Nathaniel Kofi Boakye retired also in there. I'll just briefly look at this initial setup by the president, and then we'll look at what appointments he has made today, and then we can draw some comparisons or otherwise from there. Now, President John Dramani Mahama, then president-elect, unveiled a 6-member team to manage and oversee national security matters, pending substantive appointments to key positions. The team, to be led by the former Minister for the Interior, Prosper Douglas Bunny, will assume its responsibilities starting Tuesday, January 7, 2025. Then, according to a statement issued by Felix Kwakye-Ofosu, special aide to the president-elect. Now, let's look at the members of the team as was set up then by the president. Prosper Douglas Bunny, a former Minister for the Interior. He obviously was the team leader. Then you had Lieutenant General Peter Augustine Blair, retired, who is a former Chief of Defense Staff in there. Kofi Totobi Kwache, a former Minister for National Security. Larry Bevlo Lati Esquire, former National Security Coordinator. Brigadier General Husseini Idrusu, retired, also in there. And then COP Nathaniel Kofi Boakye, retired, also in there. So this was the interim National Security Coordinating Team for John Dramani Mahama, then president-elect. But now as president, he has announced these appointments to his, he has made these security appointments, national security appointments, which will have again a former Chief of Staff and Minister for the Interior, Prosper Douglas Bunny, as National Security Advisor. Now, recall that then he was leading a National Security Coordinating Team during the transition, but now he's been appointed National Security Advisor, okay? And then you would have DCOP Abdul Osman Razak. He was not part of the National Security Transition Team, but now he has been appointed as the National Security Coordinator. We know that he was at headquarters somewhere in 2017. He was sent to, I think, Adenta Division. At a point, he was training security officers, even just for ahead of the elections. He trained officers for election-related activities at the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center and all that. So DCOP Abdul Osman Razak, initially not part of the security coordinating team for the transition, but now appointed National Security Coordinator. You have COP Nathan Kofi Boakye, retired, who was part of the transition team, the security coordinating team for the transition, now appointed Director of Operations at the Presidency. And the statement from the President, he says he's to oversee operational effectiveness in security matters. Okay, we'll look at the individuals. I just want to draw the comparisons between that transition team and the appointments made today.
So essentially, 3 new persons have been brought into
two retained, and three persons
have been brought into them. You know, when the president-elect then made the appointment, the conversation was on the powers upon which these people were supposed to act. Of course, we are a country governed by law, and every position, every mandate that anybody is supposed to act with, that person ought to show proof of where that power is emanating from. But you would also have to acknowledge that at the time when these appointments were made, as in the committee to coordinate national security issues during the transition period, there was that sort of lax, or if for want of better words, let's say a gray area on whether certain people were acting or whether certain people were not acting. Because, of course, the tenure of the government elapsed on midnight of January 7. But we also know that after the defeat, a lot of government appointees, a lot of people who were in office, and particularly because of the winner-takes-all system that we operate, either were reluctant to act or were not acting at all. And so it was important at the time for the president-elect to find a way to make sure that there's somebody who's keeping an eye on security matters. Mind you, we had gone into an election, regardless of how peaceful the election was. The aftermath had certain actions that could have thrown the country into a precarious situation. And so you needed a certain form of eye on the security architecture. But having been affirmed as president and having been sworn in as president, you also then needed to now avert your mind to the legal regime for which you operate. Because it is the Constitution that has given you the power, and you need to act in accordance with the Constitution. And to act means you ought to appoint people rightfully. There were certain people, because of the exigencies at the time, you needed them to act in overseeing the security architecture during the transition. But you may not necessarily want them to be in those particular positions when the government has been formed. If you keep them there without acting and without appointing the substantive person, what it means is that these people are being briefed on security issues that you may not want them to be aware of. And so, having made that appointment a day after a week of the swearing in is essential. Now, the big job comes in, what has to do with the work of the various security institutions and what exactly they are supposed to do. I mean, of course, if you look at the sub-region issues of terrorism, if you look at our borders, if you look at internal security, there are a lot of things that ought to be put in place to ensure that the country is stable, the country is safe, and people are able to go about their normal activities. The president reserves the right to appoint anybody, and so even though as president-elect, he decided to appoint 5 persons to be the main security corpus overseeing the security architecture. As president, he has decided to make some few changes. Of course, he does not necessarily have to explain to us why he's made those changes, and that's why we voted for him. We trust that he will take decisions that will essentially inure to the benefit of the Ghanaian people. And so all we can do at this time is to trust in his judgment and in the judgment of his advisors.
But if you see the appointments made so far, it clearly reflects a balance of expertise and a focus on governance, economic acceleration, security, legal affairs. I'll take you back to the day or the eve of the swearing in. This will be on the 6th of January. Some appointments were made. And again, Prosper Douglas Bani was in there. So 3 times the president has made any appointments as president-elect and as president. Prosper Douglas Bani has been in there. I'll give you a list of that one. Some serving as interim, others confirmed, as we have seen now with Prosper Bani. Those appointments, when they came, had Julius Debra to serve as chief of staff. Dr. Callistus Mahama named executive secretary to the president. Prosper Douglas Bani to lead the interim security task force. Dr. Valerie Sawyer appointed senior presidential advisor, governmental affairs. Augustus Guzi Tano to act as presidential advisor responsible for the 24-hour economy and accelerated export development. Marietta Ajewa Brew to serve as legal counsel to the president of Ghana. Felix Kwache Ofosu appointed acting spokesperson to the president. So initially, there was appointment on an interim national security coordinating team, which had Prosper Bani in there. Then, prior to the swearing in, there was a list of 7 appointments, also having Prosper Bani in there leading the interim security task force. Okay, now we've had the major appointments, national security appointments, and this time confirmed Prosper Bani to serve as national security advisor to the president. What does this tell you about the level of confidence the president reposes in someone like Prosper Bani and his expertise in the security area?
I think it goes without saying, because, I mean, to have one person to be appointed
on 3 different occasions within a space of about 1 week.
and also within the same field. So it is not as though the president appointed him in different capacities. In all these instances, whether it was to lead the security coordinating committee for the transition period, or to be the interim national security advisor for the backroom staff close to the president, or now as the national security advisor, he was essentially, or he's always been appointed at that particular role. And I've explained how, apart from the personal relationship that exists between John Mahama and Prosper Bani, the sort of experience he is bringing into the into the government of John Mahama, particularly because John Mahama has the highest form of endorsement as far as presidential mandate is concerned. 56 point about 2% or 4% by the Electoral Commission's updated figures. Over 1.8 million votes difference between him and his closest contender, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. He has he needs to justify why the people have given him that mandate, or he has to ensure that the people become proud for giving him such a mandate. And to do so in all aspects of his appointments, he's required, or he knows that he has to get the best of hands and people he can trust to deliver this. Again, it is not going to be a difficult one. Looking at all the things he's promised and looking at the task ahead. If it's about the economy, I mean, when we witnessed the vetting of Dr. Castle Forsen, it was clear that they have an understanding that the task ahead is not going to be an easy one. And so this is not time to try people, if I can put it that way. This is not necessarily a time to try people. This is a time to put people can do the work and would do the work. The other thing has to do with the mandate the NDC has in Parliament. Over 180 MPs specifically as of now, 183 NDC-sponsored candidates are in Parliament as members of Parliament elect. 4 independent candidates have made their decision to side with the NDC. The president says he's going to appoint 60 ministers. I've always said, if he decides to appoint all 60 ministers from Parliament, you have over 120 MPs who are not ministers. Right? And we know how these issues can bring acrimony. How these issues can bring some form of disturbances or within the caucus. And so you need certain people who can maintain order and sanity within the caucus. And so Professor Bani, I think John Mahama believes, cuts the bill for the job. And
I couldn't agree more. I mean, Prosper Bani, he has featured in all appointments made by the president so far, from the interim stage, from the transition stage up until now, where he's been confirmed national security advisor to the president. Now, we'll look at what the other names on this appointment list are and who they are. DCOP Abdul Osman Razak is to serve as National Security Coordinator, and his work is cut out for him. He is to ensure a cohesive strategy across all security initiatives. There you have DCOP Abdul Osman Razak in your shot there. Let's move on to COP Nathaniel Kofi Boakye, retired. I mean, he needs no introduction. We've seen and heard of his exploits as a police officer, and it comes as no surprise, having featured in that interim security task force by the then president-elect, and now being confirmed Director of Operations at the presidency with the mandate to oversee operational effectiveness in security matters. Now, there's a particular interest in the National Intelligence Bureau, which will have Charles Al-Hassan Kipo as its Director General. There you have them in your shot there, Charles Al-Hassan Kipo as the Director General of the National Intelligence Bureau, what you previously know as the BNI, Ghana's own institution that is akin to the U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigations, the FBI. Charles Kipo will be replacing Nana Atobra Kweku. We know that Charles Kipo has worked with the Bureau over a long period. He has served under heads such as Yaudonko, Osu Fojo, Paul Awalinga, and even Nana Atobra Kweku there. And so his elevation to Director General more or less marks of career progression. But for the national security apparatus and the type of image that has come to be associated with it in recent times, and I'm making referral to events such as elections where we see persons dressed in black or maxed up, sometimes in khaki, allegedly tagged national security operatives. We've seen instances where people have allegedly been abducted to show somebody power, also allegedly attributed to national security operatives. How much of a task is it for these new appointees to bring the image of the national security apparatus back to its former glory?
I think that the days when we believe that national security operations should be shrouded in some form of secrecy have passed. And so there's a need for more transparency in its operations. And national security in the eyes of a number of people and the perception that has been created in some persons due to what we've witnessed the national security do, or officers of the national security do, is one that akin to abuse of office. And so I think that the critical role that the national security coordinator and the national security advisor to the president will be interested in, and I think Ghanaians will be excited to see, is a rebrand of the national security to move away from the days of abusing its powers, from the days of not respecting the rights of people they suspect to have committed certain crimes, and also even the NIB, because there are instances you hear stories of how people allegedly have been maltreated within the custody of the NIB. And I think that it starts from the recruitment.
Right.
Unlike the police, the military, the immigration, customs, you would often than not be able to follow, if only you're interested in their activities, follow the recruitment the recruitment to the training and even to the passing out. Often than not, for national security and what people within the field have written about is that you get party apparatchiks, party internal security persons drafted into the national security. And then that becomes a basis for the government or the party in power to use the national security as a tool to promote its political agenda.
Right.
And these issues were identified in reports like the also West Wogon, by election violence. And of course, I think whilst we are at it, we may talk more of some of the recommendations that that came out as a result of that commission. So I think that the first thing they need to look at is recruitment, and then the training. The second thing has to do with identification. Of course, we know that there are instances where you have national security operatives who you would need them to infiltrate into certain spaces and get information. But beyond that, if there's a national event that somebody claims to be a national security person, for instance, if there's an election and there's somebody playing a role in that election as a national security operative, I don't know why that person will be in a balaclava and that person will not have his inscription on his clothes.
No proper identification.
No proper identification. And in instances like that, you get people agitated, even situations where tensions could be easily de-escalated because they can't trust who is leading the process. The tensions end up flaring up, and what happens is one that we are not interested, we all do not like. So for me, I think that the character and the face of national security is one that you need to look at carefully. I mean, I was reporting from IRSO West Wogan, and it was a frightening scene. We don't talk much of what has happened, and there are people who've been maimed for life.
Exactly.
And we've just let it go as a people. But it can't be that. We have a constitution as a people that says you cannot arrest any person without cause, and even when you arrest them with cause, you need to make sure that their rights are respected appropriately. And so for the national security, that's one thing. But to end on COP Nathan Kofi Boakye, I think it's from the election period when the NDC said he was going to be a critical player in their election security machinery. It was understandable that indeed when they come to power, he's going to play an essential role as far as the security of the country is concerned. And of course, he works in the Ashanti region.
Yeah, he's credited for maintaining peace, safety, and security in the Ashanti region.
And we've been reporting about Ashanti region. You know the issues in Ashanti region. I bet you no month goes by without you having a report of a mysterious death or some robbery attack or the security.
You recall the abduction of the Australian girls and all that.
Certainly, and so having been recognized for maintaining peace in Ashanti, and not only there, even on the Accra-Kumasi highway with his strategic patrols, I think that will be a great addition to the national security architecture of the country, having retired as well. So we need to make good use of some of these people. Very
well. Thank you so much, Hansen. The news is that President John Dramani Mahama has announced a series of key security appointments. Prosper Douglas Bani, National Security Advisor; DCOP Abdul Osman Razak, National Security Coordinator; COP Nathan Kofi Boache, retired, Director of Operations at the Presidency; and Charles Al-Hassan Kipo, Director General of the National Intelligence Bureau. Charles Kipo, we are told his last position was Director in charge of Administration at the National Intelligence Bureau. My name is Nanatufo Boating. I did this with Hansen Ajiman. Earlier, we heard from Hafiz Tijani in the Ashanti region, where the NDC is challenging parliamentary results for the Obuasi East, Ahafuano North, and Ahafuano Southwest constituencies. We will be updating you subsequently on our programming right here on Channel One Television. Many thanks for your time. Keep watching Channel One TV.